Well, I'm here at my desk with the podcasting gear out. I have a full complement of stuffed giraffe toys. It can only mean one thing. It must be time, Pete, for the Constant Geekery podcast.
Hey, Doc, you better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
So, the awful accent aside, Pete, obviously that's some kind of reference to Back to the Future. I'm confused, though, I'll be honest.
Yeah, well, I thought tonight is a discussion around things that don't really make any sense and inappropriately connected. So I thought I'd just start off as we mean to go on, or at least as Intel mean to go on, it would seem.
Okay, excellent. Well, that alludes to our...
And that was my best Marty McFly impression.
Okay, well, you know, some work is required.
Well, okay, fair enough.
I would say, and I'm sorry to break that to you, Pete. Of course, our main topic this evening is going to be talking about Intel hitting the self-destruct button, it would seem. Very strange. But before we do that, we like to kick off the podcast with Dave Drinks. And I had lined up a nice dram of single malt this evening, which I'll be honest, Pete, I've been looking forward to all afternoon.
What did you have lined up?
I was going to have some Bunnahabhain. I don't know if that's how you say it.
That I know the one you mean, though. That is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I can understand why you were looking forward to that.
I was looking forward to that. But then some scumbag who's supposed to be my friend came over to drop off this. Now,
what is that?
I'm holding up a bottle of Palm Beach rum liqueur, mango and passion fruit flavour. And for those who are listening to the podcast and therefore cannot see this delightful bottle, if you sort of think 80s for the label and the kind of 80s colours and designs, and you probably will be able to envisage what it is that I've got. So I'm going to have to open this up. Well, I'm not going to have to, but I'm going to, Pete. I'm going to play along, seeing as you went to the expense of buying it.
Excellent. I've got a pot of tea, by the way. I'm back to British classics this week.
I'm very pleased for you. And I'd just also like to point out as well that my wife seems to be also intent on stitching me up. She's applied a slice of lemon to my whiskey glass. Furthermore, she's also given me a cocktail umbrella to put in it. So
that is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Shell.
There is the cocktail umbrella for those who can see. I don't know how much of this to pour out into a glass, Pete, I'll be honest.
Well, it's rum liqueur, so that suggests it's not as strong as rum.
Well, that would suggest that it's probably the right amount is none at all. Yeah,
but as I bought it for you, as a gift...
Pete, that smells as disgusting as I imagined it would. I quite like fruit, but if there's a fruit that I don't like, it's got to be mango.
Closely followed by passion fruit.
It's not ideal. But I'm going to pour.
Can I just say, pour a generous measure, and then I'd really like you to,
I'll hold that to the microphone for a bit of ASMR. Hang on. Probably didn't work.
Glug.
That is a huge quantity there.
Don't knock it back all at once. Take a little sip, throw out. Savour it.
Oh, it's sticky, Pete. Right, what am I supposed to do with this? How am I supposed to drink it with this cocktail umbrella in it? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of...
I think you hold the cocktail umbrella like that in one hand. Look,
I'm going to just poke it through the lemon. Look, there we go. Is that satisfactory?
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay. I'd quite like to eat the lemon because lemon is one of my favourite fruits, and I do like to eat lemon. Which I probably will have to do after tasting this. Okay, here goes nothing. But why would they make that, Pete? Why would they make that?
For those that aren't watching on YouTube, that's youtube.com/the Constant Geekery podcast. Dave's face now is a picture of, well, if I could describe it, it would be a bulldog licking wee wee off a thistle, or drinking this rum liqueur with mango and passion fruit.
That's just... I imagine as part of one of many ingredients in some kind of
Cheesecake.
tropical cocktail or cheesecake, whatever. Pete. It might be nice. In other words, if you've put enough other ingredients in so that you cannot taste that, I expect it to be fine. It's a bit
much like a laptop that has many ingredients, one of which is an Intel processor.
We should move on. I will promise to finish that, and although I regret how much I poured out, but I will work at that.
We do have a Pete's Eats this evening as well. You'll be pleased to know.
Look forward to that.
But I will just say on record, I will not. Someone sent me a video the other day of someone eating. I can't even. It's a Swedish delicacy, but basically it's rotten herring. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't eat seafood anyway, as you know. I'm highly allergic to it. But this poor guy, he couldn't even get it in his mouth. Just the smell was making him retch.
There's a show on Netflix called Flinch. Have you ever seen that? And the idea is the contestants have to face these challenges and not flinch. And one of them is that they have to sit down whilst a model train runs past them with rotten meat, maggots and that stinking Bishop cheese, and that fish that you're talking about is one of them. And they're if they flinch, they get poked with a cattle prod, and electrified. It's really...
Is that a Japanese program?
No, it's Irish, and it's very funny.
Oh right, okay.
So I
will look that one up. I'll look that up. And I've been enjoying. There's a couple of sort of hot rod restoration programs on Netflix. Rust Valley Motors and there's another one as well, Rust Restorers or something like that. And they've got some really awesome cars in them that they do up. Some amazing stuff. Really, really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, I can never work out how they actually managed to get those lovely cars at the end of Rust Valley Motors, because they appear to be completely disorganised. And hey, what are we talking about anyway? Shall we move into some tech, Pete, for the podcast? Now,
let's do that.
Listeners/viewers, do you remember when Apple did the whole "I'm a Mac, I'm a PC" advert campaign? And if you do, you'll recall that the chap that did the "I'm a Mac" bit was an actor named Justin Long.
Do you remember him?
I do remember him.
From that advert, or do you remember him from other stuff?
Mainly that advert, although I have seen him in other things. I couldn't tell you what, though.
So do you remember, have you seen a film called Galaxy Quest?
I have indeed seen that.
Yeah, so classic. He was the young teenage fan in that of Galaxy Quest that saves the day at the end. That's the character he played. I can't remember the name of the character, but that's Justin Long.
Excellent.
Didn't realise that. I had to look it up, but yeah, he's obviously grown up.
Well, there you go. And now he's also on Intel's dollar doing anti-Mac videos for Intel. So you'll have to go and have a look at these. They're on Intel's YouTube channel. I think there's 5 of them. They're not very long. They've basically done these in extension to what we spoke about a few weeks ago, where they release these various graphics, GoPC, and made all these silly statements like, NASA doesn't use Mac, and everyone was putting up pictures of NASA engineers using Macs. Well, now they've gone and made these videos basically ridiculing the Mac. And we're going to talk about that because, not because we need to defend Apple. We're not Apple fanboys. I actually use a PC. My current daily driver laptop is, in fact, an Intel laptop with an 11th gen i7 in it. Go on, Pete. Ask me if it's as fast as the M1.
Is it as fast as the M1?
No, it's not. Is
it faster?
No.
No.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about it in a bit, perhaps. But
okay. You tease me with your speed comparisons. Well, no, and it has to be said, I have 2 operational and used PCs in this house as well.
Yes.
One of the things of which they are used for is gaming, interestingly.
Yeah. Now, the big issue with this is these adverts where Intel is basically attacking the Mac. And let's just run through what the adverts are. We've got one that's basically moaning about the fact that Macs don't come with a touchscreen.
Yep.
There's one that's moaning about the fact that the MacBooks are only available in grey.
Yeah, and silver and rose gold.
But they didn't include those.
They don't mention that.
No.
But it's easy to forget that.
It is easy to forget that. I mean, it's only on their website and very clear for everyone to see.
But they were only referring to the MacBook Pro, of course.
Oh, I see. Okay. And what the other things they're moaning about, the dongle life. Actually, that's quite funny. It made me chuckle. But yeah, the dongle life.
Touchscreen. Did you mention that one?
I mentioned touchscreen.
Monitors.
Oh, connecting more than one external monitor. Yeah. So obviously there is some validity in some of that stuff, but the big issue here is that Intel's GoPC campaign doesn't seem to make any sense. I'm not just talking about Apple users here. I'm talking about PC users aren't getting it either. And that's demonstrated, I think, by the stats on their Twitter page. So Intel has got, I've got it in front of me, 4.8 million followers on Twitter. So with 4.8 million followers, if they're launching a major new ad campaign, you'd probably expect to see quite a number of likes to that.
At least 10, I'd say.
Well, the first one they put up has 455 likes, and that was 4 days ago, I think. The second one they put up managed to get to 1.7k, and that was the dongle life one.
Right.
And then the one that they put up yesterday has a whole 184 likes. Now, if you're a marketing team and you've launched a major new ad campaign to your 4.8 million followers, and you're getting that level of response back in likes, I'd say that's a pretty epic fail, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was about to say I'll be looking for a new job, but obviously, we work in marketing. You can't get it right every time. But yeah, that's a fairly epic one.
But I would have thought they should have known that this was coming, and yet they're running with it anyway. And when you look at the comment threads, the vast majority of comments are very negative toward Intel, and they're not coming actually from Mac users. It's coming from fed-up PC users who've switched to AMD because they got frustrated with Intel's lack of progress.
One of the best comments I actually saw was, watch his video, thinks, go and get myself a PC, buys AMD PC. Intel goes, no, wait!
It is, yeah, it's terrible. I'm going to take another hit of this disgusting drink.
I know we're going to sort of deep dive into a few of the things that are brought up here, but do you know what's interesting about the dongle one?
I'm sorry, that's just... Oh. I'm so sorry, everybody. That's going to have to stay in because my eyes are watering. It's vile, Pete.
That's why I bought it.
How much did
I
that
don't think
cost?
it would be
How much did that cost? Seriously,
nearly £10, nearly
grief.
10 English pounds.
Good grief!
£9.99.
I'm just going to cough a little bit more and choke a little bit.
Okay.
The problem is the umbrella gets in the way, and as I pulled the glass to my mouth, the noxious fumes just went straight down into my lungs.
I think that's normally what's meant to happen with the umbrella for good reasons, but obviously this time it's backfired for you.
It's virulent. What were you
Can
going
I
to say?
Can I talk about the dongle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the advert, it's worth watching. It's only like 30 seconds, if that. But they showcase it as part of a laptop and tablet in one, don't they? So they're making this thing about laptop, tablet. Of course, pointing out that there is no laptop that converts to a tablet in the Apple lineup. There's just MacBooks, or MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, or an iPad Pro, or iPads. Sorry, iPads. But then they make fun of the requirement for a dongle at the end, which might have some validity if it wasn't for the fact that the laptop come tablet that they demonstrated on it was a Lenovo Yoga 9i.
Yeah.
Do you know what ports that comes with? I'll just say for the benefit of those who don't, because I suspect you do. So it comes with a headphone jack. It comes with 2 USB-C ports. It comes with 1 USB-A port. Oh, sorry, I finished. That was it. Well, sorry, it does come with a power adapter port, a proprietary power adapter. So, Mac Mini has more ports than that. So I'm not, and that and many other PCs need dongles depending on what you're trying to do. What are they trying to prove? Because I had a look at the specs for both the 15-inch and the 14-inch version of that Yoga 9i, and I'm not dissing it. I'm sure it's a lovely machine. But both of those machines, they come with either an i9 or an i7, depending on which size you go for. Both benchmark slower than the M1 MacBook Air on single core and multi-core.
Well, that's true of all mobile Intel chips. Something you said there is, they're talking about a laptop that converts into a tablet and saying Apple don't have one of those. But what Apple do have is a tablet that converts into a laptop, because you can have a keyboard and a mouse on your iPad. And I put it to you that the iPad Air and the iPad Pro are both considerably faster than... are they considerably faster now? Maybe I'm going a bit too far, but they're certainly as quick as some of the top Intel chips.
And you did use your iPad Pro as your daily driver for a while, didn't you?
Yeah. Not ideal, I'll be honest, if you're used to a desktop machine, but there wasn't that many things I couldn't get done. I would rather have a laptop with Mac OS or Windows on it, but, it was okay.
But I'm sure there's some people out there that, the one tablet and laptop in one, maybe they do use it. I'd be interested, if anyone listening to this loves that form factor, great, tell us why. But I prefer a tablet and a laptop for different jobs that I'm doing.
I can see the appeal for some people, because I did in fact have one. In fact, it was that machine that started my YouTube channel. Yeah, the X360.
Okay.
So that had tent mode, touchscreen, and a pen. I have to say though that the pen, writing on the tablet with the pen was nowhere near as nice as using an iPad with pencil.
Could I just stop you there? I'm just going to have a little
sip of tea. You're so English.
That is like nectar. Yeah.
Amazing.
Isn't it nice having a nice drink over the podcast? Carry on.
Shut your face. And I didn't use the touchscreen that much, I'll be honest. That doesn't really work for me. In fact, my current daily driver laptop does have a touchscreen. And I think I may have prodded it once. And then I thought to myself, why am I doing this when I have a perfectly good touchpad on the laptop? That's how I interface with a laptop. Because it's further away, the screen is further away from you. You don't hold it like a tablet, do you? So for me, touchscreen is not something I particularly want on a laptop format. And I know lots of other people agree, but I also know lots of other people disagree. So if you like a convertible or a temp mode and touchscreen and everything, then yeah, Mac hasn't got anything for you unless you want an iPad, which you probably don't if you want that format.
Unless you want something really fast.
Well, there is
so
that.
Yeah.
I have to say, Pete, our iPad Pros, I say ours because we changed them at the same time. So we got the 12.9 Generation 3, I think, which is not the latest gen. So it's got 3 gig of RAM instead of 6. And it's got the A12X instead of the A12Z or Z, depending on where you come from. And it's still very fast. And when I was using it as a daily driver, I was opening up some pretty massive Excel spreadsheets, and it didn't skip a beat at all. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I just don't see the point in the mockery, in Intel's advert.
Yeah, but just being devil's advocate for a minute, isn't this just the same as when Apple did the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ads with Justin?
Yeah, I'm going to say no to that.
Go on. Why not?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, it was a different time. I don't think Apple would get away with it now. They'd get a similar kind of backlash, I think, from the interwebs. But I don't think it is the same, because what Apple was doing was pitching their product against a comedy stereotype. I mean, at the time when that came out, I was, as I am now, both a PC and a Mac user, and I didn't take offence at it. I just thought it was quite funny, and also wrong in a lot of places. It was because it was just targeting a stereotype, and that's the difference. What Intel is doing is they're pitching a range of products which may or may not contain their parts against a specific company. That seems different to me. There's a subtle difference there. One's pitching against a stereotype, and the other one's attacking a specific company. And Intel have been quite derogatory, haven't they? Calling Apple the lifestyle company from Cupertino. It's like, really? Are you that juvenile?
Lacking class a little bit, isn't it?
You could say that. Yeah.
When you first pointed me at them when we were preparing for this podcast, because I've had a fairly busy week, so I've not really been keeping up with the tech news this week, I thought they were parodies to begin with. I thought they were, some hell-bent PC fanboys doing something for a joke. Genuinely. And that's, I think, how they've come across to a lot of people, haven't they? Have they come across that way to you, listeners? I don't know.
I'm sure the folks will let us know what they think. If it's anything like the Twitters and the comments on YouTube, it's pretty hostile towards Intel. And you can see that their marketing team's made an attempt to reply to a few comments, and they're pointing people at that study they did, which I did a video about on the channel, which quite a few people are watching.
The one where they keep doing the bait and switch on the different types of comparisons and things like that. Yeah.
Well, they've got to do that because ask me, Pete, about the 11th gen Intel CPU. Ask me whether it's as fast as the M1. Go on.
Is the 11th gen Intel CPU as fast as the M1?
No, it's not, Pete. It's not. But we'll discuss that a bit later.
Okay.
Something that's interesting about these adverts is that there are more Macs on sale with Intel chips than there are with M1s. So there's more Apple models that you can buy today with Intel chips in them than there are Apples with M1 chips.
And do you know what's really perverse about this whole thing? Is those Macs with the Intel chips in have all the same... The things that are levelled against them in these ads are true for those Intel Macs as much as they are the Apple Silicon Macs.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've got to say that there are some notable exceptions. But for the most part, the notebook chips, the Intel notebook chips that are in Macs are just really not that great. The MacBook Pro 15-inch and the MacBook Pro 16-inch, although to a slightly lesser extent, do like to spin the fans, don't they?
They do. They do. I was doing something the other day and I started OBS. And when I say started OBS, I just opened the software. Didn't actually start doing anything. OBS is a streaming broadcasting piece of software, by the way, if you're not familiar with that. It is quite processor intensive when you start doing stuff. And actually, I think one of our commenters a week or two ago mentioned that he uses OBS in a professional capacity on an M1 MacBook Air because it's silent.
It's silent, yeah. And it doesn't.
Whereas on an Intel Mac, which is what I've got here, it sounds like a Harrier jump jet taking off.
Do you remember, Pete? We did a live event. Must be a couple of years ago now. Did a live event, and we were filming this particular event and broadcasting it, streaming it live to YouTube. So we had several cameras set up, and we had a switcher, and then that was then being captured onto the laptop, and using OBS, we were then rendering it and sending it to YouTube. And I had my 15-inch MacBook Pro there, and it was plugged into the mains using the supplied Apple charger, and it was discharging the battery because the fans were spinning up that much, and it was so hot, simply doing this job. A job, incidentally, that I'd done previously with that Spectre X360 that we mentioned, which it did without breaking any sweat whatsoever. So something is, or was always wrong with the i7 chips in the MacBook Pro 15-inch.
We also did it with a Dell XPS, if I recall correctly,
Yeah.
and that didn't have any issues.
Yeah, no problem at all. And
So yeah, I do remember that, and I do remember you got third-degree burns on your legs from
it was
the heat.
crazy. The sheer panic of running a live event and noticing that your battery's at 3%, but your computer's already plugged in. It was horrific.
You've never seen a man more on the edge.
And, we use Microsoft Teams a lot at work. And it's got to be said, even on the M1, Microsoft Teams is not the most energy efficient app. But it can run down a battery on one of the MacBook Pros in about an hour and a half. An hour and a half of Microsoft Teams and the battery is gone. That's it. You've got to plug in. And the fan is going most of the time through the meeting and the machine is cooking. Now, I understand, there'll be people that will say, well, that's because of specific optimizations that M1 has got, etc. Well, yeah, but Intel doesn't have those. And
that's kind of the point, isn't it?
yeah. It's not a performance issue, let's be clear. The Intel chips have got the performance to do these jobs. It's just, there's obviously an issue somewhere with optimization. And something else, of course, that Intel then are leveling at Mac is that they're no good for games. And I don't think this is some massive revelation here, but at the same time, they're also wrong.
Well, if you want to, lay back and do a bit of farming simulator,
Well,
you can indeed do that.
just about you can if you don't mind the low frame rates. The simple truth is that the M1 can actually play games quite well. I mean, we're not talking AAA titles here, guys. We're talking basic stuff. But the onboard graphics on the M1 is, they're pretty good.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say that most non-gaming specific PC laptops can't play AAA titles at full frame rates?
Well, yeah, that's true.
My understanding, my gaming PC is quite a few years old now, but my understanding is if you want to play AAA at full power, you're investing in graphics cards of significant cost and what have you, if you can get one.
Yeah, that's true. So really, we're not talking about that gaming market. I mean, I've got no argument with this. I don't game on my Mac. Very, very rarely have I done that. I used to do it when I had the old 5.1 cheese grater, and because I had an NVIDIA card in it at the time, a Titan X, and so yeah, I did. I had boot camp on it, so I booted into Windows to game. And some people do game in Mac. I have done it. I have got some games that are Mac specific, and it works fine. It's just the selection is very small, and that's because there's no incentive for developers to write games for Mac because the audience isn't there. So of course they're going to go to PC where they're going to get the return on their investment. But here's what I wanted to just focus in on. Intel are making these comparisons. Of course, in their videos, there's never a single mention of the processor itself, but let's come back to that in a moment. The Intel 11th gen CPUs have got Iris Xe graphics, and this, it should be said, is a significant step up from previous onboard Intel graphics. But I have a laptop with an 11th gen Intel CPU. I don't know if I mentioned that, Pete, which has Iris Xe graphics on board. So go on, ask me whether the Iris Xe graphics are as good as the M1 GPU.
Are the Iris Xe graphics better than the M1 GPU?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you had a Windows laptop. You didn't mention that.
I do keep it quite quiet. No,
why don't you have a little? I'm just having a little tea break at this moment. Why don't you have a bit of tea? Or no, you haven't got tea, have you? Why don't you have a little? There we go. So again,
I've got
for
to try
those
not to breathe at this point.
There you go, YouTubers. Well, actually, listeners who aren't on YouTube, Dave's having another slurp of basically sugared engine degreaser.
It is. I might as well be drinking that, Pete. I'm going to get you back. I am going to get you back. So, Intel are arguing anyway that the M1 can't run games.
Yeah.
But it can run games significantly better than any Intel-equipped Mac that doesn't have a dedicated GPU. And it's actually better than some that do have a dedicated GPU. Take, for instance, the Radeon Pro 560X. The M1 GPU is quite a bit quicker than that. So what are Intel talking about? None of their integrated graphics options on the 10th gen and lower CPUs can compete with the M1 GPU for gaming.
Again, what's the point? What are they trying to say? If you're a serious gamer, you're not going to go for an M1 Mac. But if you're a serious gamer, you're not going to go for a run-of-the-mill PC laptop. You are going to go for something that's fairly specialist.
Yeah,
it just happens to be a PC architecture.
You're not going to go for the Asus Ultrabook that they're featuring in their advert, are you? I mean, that's not going to be any better.
No,
it's a bit disingenuous. So I've got a question. I've got a question for you, Pete.
Okay, go on.
Intel's behaving like Apple is a massive threat to them. Is Apple a massive threat to Intel? What do we think?
Well, when you think that 10% of new computers that are sold in the US are Apple, no. However, Apple are slowly increasing their market share, and the M1 is gonna make a bigger dent in that.
Well, bear in mind a lot of that 10% as well is Intel chips and has been Intel chips for the last few years. But yeah, go on. What's your assessment?
So this is, as we've said all along, this is Apple's first foray into their own silicon. Okay, and Intel are already behind and showing no signs of, they've probably spent all of their budget on chip innovation on these ads, but I get the feeling they must know what's coming next. I mean, they must know what's coming next. We're getting speculation on the YouTubes about the M1X and all that kind of stuff, and that's all clickbait, but you can't tell me that somewhere in Intel they haven't got some kind of industrial intelligence unit that at least has a sense of what Apple's coming up with next. And to be behaving like this in such an infantile way, they must feel threatened. They must be scared about what is coming next. And they're trying to grab a little bit more before whatever comes next comes. That's my take on it.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I mean, Intel is a huge company, but that doesn't mean they're too big to fail. So think about the attacks they're getting. Not attacks, but competition is what I mean. They're getting competition, which they haven't had for a while. So when it comes to gaming chips, well, yeah. AMD offers better, faster solutions. The Ryzen 9 series is much better than Intel's equivalent, it would seem. I haven't personally tested that, but that's what it would seem. When it comes to workstation class chips, AMD's offering Epic and Threadripper Pro, or even standard Threadripper as well, and those are even in the older generation. So without going to the new Zen 3, they still kill the Xeon equivalents. And Intel, their fastest workstation CPU is or their biggest sort of multi-threaded workstation CPU, I should say, is a 28 core. And you can go and get a 64 core Threadripper Pro. And it does outperform it, not just because it's got more cores, because actually the 32 core version will outperform that 28 core Xeon as well. So Intel are basically getting beaten in the workstation market. Also in the server market, which traditionally x86 machines have gotten a decent foothold ever since the late 90s. They got into servers. But you'll know this, Pete. What is the biggest single cost to us for our data centers that we use for our web servers?
Power.
Power is the biggest cost. It costs more than bandwidth. So having energy efficient servers is incredibly important. Now, I don't know how many servers we look after, quite a lot, but we're dwarfed in comparison to something like Amazon, for example, who are running Amazon Web Services. And Amazon have actually designed their own ARM CPU. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
Yeah. So
did I? I might have done, but I've forgotten it.
They've done it in conjunction with somebody, but yeah, so Amazon have their own CPU. I'm pretty sure Google are doing it. Microsoft certainly are doing it. The fastest supercomputers in the world are running on ARM architecture. Now, I'm not saying that ARM architecture is necessarily better than x86, or I'm not trying to start any kind of debate here. I'm just saying that this is obviously cutting into Intel's market. And within that server market, there is also the IBM Power chips, and so there are other architectures available. But Intel, well, all of our web servers are Intel chips, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think we've got any AMD. No, they're all Intel Xeons.
No.
So, people like us who are buying servers from Dell and HP and the like, we're getting Intel chips. And how long will it be until we're getting ARM chips? And then at the other end of the scale, we've got the notebook chips, and Intel is getting beaten by the M1. And they've obviously put a lot of work into their 11th gen, and it is. Although we've made a few silly comments, it is actually incredibly good, the 11th gen platform. But it looks like AMD's new mobile Ryzens are even better still.
Yeah.
I just got to apologise for the noise if you can hear it in the background. We get overflown by helicopters at all times of the day here. So
I did wonder what that was, but it's fine. It adds a bit of eerie atmosphere to the podcast.
So if you're Intel, you're getting stiff competition in basically every sector, either from AMD or from ARM chip manufacturers or from Apple. But of all of those, surely Apple is the smallest.
Well, potentially, but from a market share point of view, but from a PR point of view, possibly that's the more visible one, isn't it? And in some ways, you've got to commend Intel for, as you said, no one's too big to fall. But we have seen throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century, big behemoths kind of sitting on their laurels, thinking we're number one, no one can ever topple us. When people moved from valves to semiconductors, there was a company, the name escapes me now, but they didn't move quick enough from making valves into semiconductors, and they went from being the valve supplier to not existing anymore. Someone will probably pop in the comments who it was. But the point is, if you get complacent, suddenly everything can catch up with you. So from that point of view, it's good that Intel are recognizing, it's good that they probably feel threatened, because it's good for the consumers, it's good for everyone that uses their product, and it's probably good for Intel's long-term safety that they're thinking we're being threatened here. I think just the way they're responding to it is not the best way.
No, well, I think they're losing support very fast, and I think obviously Intel must be working hard behind the scenes to catch up. But that's not going to be the perception that the consumer gets. And again, that consumer perception, like you said, is important. They need to do better PR, and this is pretty crummy effort. Now, Intel has, as far as I'm aware, if the news is to be believed, Intel has reportedly bought a huge portion of TSMC's 3 nanometer process.
Okay.
So they, as far as I'm aware, Intel's own 14 nanometer process, they're still using that for the big desktop chips. The 10 nanometer process is for the mobile chips. They can't get enough cores in to make that the desktop process. It should also be said that Intel's 10 nanometer is probably equivalent to TSMC's 7 nanometer. So they're not as far behind as everyone says they are.
Because it's denser, isn't it?
I'll be honest,
there's more transistors per square meter.
So, if you can't beat them, join them, buy some TSMC space. I mean, Apple, as far as I'm aware, has got first dibs on it. So they'll still be beaten to market by Apple, but who knows? Right. Here's the key thing, though. With all of these adverts, Intel makes CPUs. I know they make other things as well. They make the Wi-Fi card and they're making other things, but primarily CPUs is what it's about, and performance.
Yep.
And that is the singular thing that does not get mentioned in any of these adverts. It's so conspicuous by its absence. If Intel had the performance to defeat the M1, they would be crowing about it.
Oh, and that goes back to my point. They this is Apple Silicon outing 1, and they're already trying to bait and switch and direct, attention elsewhere. That no mention of performance, no mention of thermals, battery life, that kind of thing. It's all about really very ancillary things to most people.
So let's move away from these adverts for a moment. I just want to talk about my experience with the 11th gen Intel CPU.
Have you got one?
I have actually got one.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Which some people might wonder about, because I absolutely loved my MacBook Pro, which had an Intel quad-core in. My 13-inch MacBook Pro. It wasn't the fastest machine in the world, but it was a good computer. The issue that we've got is that as we've said before, we're not decking out our web developers at our design agency with M1 machines at this point in time. And we're not going to go out and buy new Intel machines. So I sacrificed my MacBook for one of our developers who deserves it far more than me, and I'm sure he's very pleased with it. Which meant I needed to just get a stopgap. And I'm looking around, and Amazon had a ridiculous deal on the Razer Stealth 13. So I just bought one of those. It's got an 1165 G7 in it, which is the quad-core i7. That's the processor they use for the battery life comparison.
Okay.
They use the 1185 G7 for the performance comparison. So I just want to get that out there. The 65 G7 is not quite as quick as the 85 G7.
Okay. Is it good?
It is fantastic, actually. It's a great laptop. It's the first Windows laptop I've had that has got a touchpad that is as good as a touchpad on a MacBook Pro.
And that in of itself is quite a step forward, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with Intel, of course. That's Microsoft's drivers and Razer's manufacturing process. So I do need to say it's not an Evo platform laptop, because it has an NVIDIA card in it as well.
Okay.
But it is a very nice laptop for the ridiculously cheap price that Amazon were selling them for. I don't even know how they did it. It's almost half price. It's crazy. Must have been a glitch, but anyway, I blagged one. Is it faster than the M1? Absolutely not. Now, I haven't done loads of in-depth testing, but I have used all of my daily apps, which I've also used on an M1, and I can tell you that the M1 is faster. However, it's not faster in the sense that, I couldn't possibly live with this performance. It's a negligible difference that I think most people wouldn't really notice. And we're at that point where even when the new M1 comes out, of course, everyone will be crowing about the benchmarks. But in real world, actual usage, is anyone going to notice the difference? Probably not. So some things that I've noticed with it is, using Office and stuff like that, it's all fine. However, the PC, you need to have it plugged in to get the full performance. And you also need to slide the thing, in Windows to put it on best performance.
Okay.
And
what happens when you do that? Do you get a helicopter going overhead?
Well, the fans, it's the same with any x86 machine. It'd be the same with an AMD equipped machine. They use more power, so they generate more heat. So the fans spin up. Yeah.
Laws of physics again.
It is. Something that I noticed with, I had cause to do just a little bit of editing to an image. I took a screenshot and I just needed to blur something out. So I loaded up my go-to image editor, which is Affinity Photo, which I have on both Mac and PC. And I was using the laptop on battery, and I was quite surprised at how sluggish it was just doing that little job.
Really?
Yeah. Plug it in, and it's good. And I know it's not the app, by the way, before anyone says that, because I run that on my PC workstation. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. It runs butter smooth. So I don't doubt for a moment that there are things where the Intel chip is faster than the M1. I don't doubt that. But
we know there is. We know there is.
We know there is, yeah. But in general computing terms, just your day-to-day, everyday stuff that someone's likely to do on a laptop like this, no, it's not as fast as the M1. Sorry, folks, and that's not a fanboy comment. It's just a simple statement of the truth. That's the case. It's not as quick. Apart from, there's one thing where this is quite interesting. If you boot it up from cold, it is amazingly fast. Just a few seconds,
Really?
you're at the Windows Hello thing and it signs you in. Macs just don't boot up that quickly.
No.
When you put it to sleep, though, when you put a Mac to sleep and you wake it back up, it's an instant on thing. With the PC, not so much. It takes longer with the PC to wake from sleep. So PC boots faster than the Mac, but the Mac wakes up from sleep faster than the PC.
Yeah, and I guess most people these days don't turn their machines off that often. I don't, unless there's a reason to. So maybe in day to day, that will become more noticeable if Apple have put their focus on that waking from sleep performance as opposed to boot time. You're going to get a better experience.
Yeah.
Apple are very good at that, aren't they? They're very good at, doing the things we perceive to be, the things that we perceive that make it quicker.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, raw performance quicker, but because they seem quicker, that can make all the difference in an experience, can't it?
Yeah, and in all fairness, let's just say as well that is part of the Evo criteria as well, isn't it, for Intel machines that meet that Evo standard, which the computer I'm talking about doesn't. So,
right.
In fairness, if you go and buy an Evo laptop with the 1165 or the 1185 G7, you're going to be happy with it. It's because it's a great laptop. And Intel should be crowing about or, championing the fact that they've made a great product, because it is a great product.
There you go. You heard it.
Just because
Intel
someone's made a slightly
PC,
quicker one,
great product.
It's so daft. You don't get. This doesn't seem to happen in other industries. Why are they so butthurt about the fact that someone else has made something that goes slightly quicker? I mean, particularly
it does happen though in other industries, though, doesn't it? It does.
Okay.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that Mercedes advert with the chickens and the Diana Ross music?
No.
So there was a Mercedes advert, and they had these guys holding chickens with white gloves and moving the chickens around, and their heads would stay still while their bodies were moved around.
Oh, got you. Yeah.
And it was a really good advert, actually, and a great bit of Diana Ross. I like a bit of Diana Ross. That's good. And then Jaguar came along and did one where the chicken got eaten by a jaguar. So you do get a little bit of it, but I know what you mean. It seems to be this ongoing thing, doesn't it? In Apple versus everyone else, by the sound of it.
But that what you've just said, I mean, that's funny, and there's a bit of class to it, and I'm sure Mercedes had a chuckle themselves at that. Surely, it's very different, I think, to what Intel are doing, where they're specifically rubbishing a product and saying things like, oh, I can choose between grey and grey, when the PCs that are all queued up there, I think with the exception of a couple they've turned around at the front. I think one of them's pink and one of them's silver. The rest of them are all black. It's so disingenuous, and I just wonder, Pete, why is Intel hitting the self-destruct button so hard?
Well, I think it's for the things we've talked about. They've got AMD competition on all fronts. You've got ARM architecture chips, taking a piece of the server market. M1 drawing all the headlines, even when there's a problem. Like with the SSD issues that we've been talking about, still getting M1 there. And they've got problems with their own fabrication process such that they've then got to go to TSMC. I think they're just reacting. It's a very knee-jerk reaction to a fairly perfect storm of things going against them at the moment. And what they need to do is get their shizzle together, and start innovating again rather than trying to lash out. Just come back with a good product.
Yeah, I think when you've got to the point where you've got to attack the competition instead of promote your own products, then you've already failed.
Yeah,
I think that's a fairly fundamental marketing principle, and I don't understand it either. They're putting the adverts out on TV for the Evo laptops, which they should do. They've made a good product. They should be shouting about it. If it hadn't have been for the M1, everyone would be shouting about it and saying it's the best. But there we go. Anyway, we don't favour any particular manufacturer. I'm perfectly happy using Intel's chips. I'm perfectly happy using AMD's chips or Apple's chips. Whatever helps me get my job done, I don't mind. I'm just disappointed when these companies, just don't seem to be able to understand pure common sense.
And we call out Apple on that as well, don't we? With their silly environmental claims and things like that. So, and we will continue to do it.
Speaking
like,
of
for
which,
example, on the March the 20th, I was going to say, like on the Apple event that's coming this Tuesday.
Is it though?
No, it's not. At least nothing has been announced by Apple yet. So yet again, more rumours and smoke and mirrors.
Or as,
I'm
as
sure there'll be
YouTubers
something
like to call
coming
them
soon.
now, leak bombs, Pete. You get the de rigueur thumbnail is YouTuber looking shocked, and then big leak bomb.
I was wrong. It's like the more we get into YouTube, the more these things is just like, and I really appreciate the comments of a lot of our subscribers that we aren't like that, and we do things a bit differently. We will continue to try and resist the temptation to be like that. But yeah, it drives me crazy. And the more, of course, the more stuff I'm looking at, the more the algorithm suggests these ridiculous videos with their stupid thumbnails to me. And I have to watch them just so that I know what to avoid, because I know that our subscribers on the whole, on both channels, like a bit more higher class tech conversation. I know we get a bit silly on this podcast channel sometimes, but, it's a bit more relaxed. But we do like to keep it real.
Good. Well, hopefully we've managed to do that this evening. I feel like we've said what we needed to say. Be interested to hear your views. Are Intel hitting the self-destruct button here? Are they just having a funny 5 minutes? What do you think about the ads? Hit or miss? Let us know in the comments. And speaking of comments, Pete, we haven't done any for a couple of weeks. So do we want to highlight a couple of comments? Have you got any?
I think it would be rude not to. We were talking about consumer laws here in the UK last week's podcast, and saying that obviously Apple will try and just do whatever they have to in each country. So in other countries, because we were talking about SSD usage, wear and tear, weren't we? And how Apple Care is a good idea, particularly if you're not in the UK. Nice comment from Tolga, who lives in Turkey. He says, Apple replaced my 2-year-old iPhone that I serviced that he sent back because it had a noisy microphone. And they are known as a customer-friendly company here in Turkey. People say that they'll buy Apple products because they know Apple will care. So he just wanted to let us know that. So really appreciate that, Tolga. It's good to know that not just your experience, but anyone else listening in Turkey, I think if perhaps jumping into buying an Apple device, that's a good bit of feedback. And I really liked the comment from Alexander Presthus, who appreciates, he grew up with computers in the 80s and 90s. He's worked as a sysadmin. He finds Apple fanboys as annoying as we do. He doesn't feel like we need a fanatical relationship with Macs, even though he quite likes the Apple ecosystem. And a bit like us, he finds it gets a bit old having to defend why you use a particular device to do a particular job. You can't imagine going into a garage and someone going to a mechanic, you're using that spanner to do that job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, why do you have to be so polarised? Really good feedback there, Alexander. Thank you for that support. And then a lot of feedback about the SSD issues and the survey in general. Lots of people, saying, they're seeing the same issues with Chrome that we reported in the podcast, and also in your main video on the main channel, which went into a deeper dive on those things. That's Constant Geekery. YouTube.com/Constant Geekery. If you're not subscribed to the main channel, there's a really good deep dive into some of the survey findings there. But Chrome does seem to be one of the culprits. But I say one because we found some other things, haven't we, Dave?
Yeah, and I'd like to make it clear that I was just reporting on what someone had said. I don't believe that Chrome is causing all the issues. I think it's just one of a whole number of contributing factors. A lot of people are saying that it's just Rosetta. It's Rosetta translation that's causing the problem, and if you don't use any Rosetta apps, then you don't get the problem. I don't think that's actually quite right. We have said previously Rosetta is one of the issues, but I don't think it's behind every single issue that we're seeing. I haven't dived into the data to find the actual answer to that, and I'm not sure that our data will tell us. But I think it's a whole collection of different things that's causing, for some people, a perfect storm. That's where I'm at with it, because I'm still not getting those problems with my M1. And I'm using lots of different software apps from lots of different places, and I'm not having any problems.
And going back to what we were saying earlier about YouTube clickbait and that kind of thing, I'm seeing videos popping up now pointing to it being Chrome or pointing it to being this or that. And yes, there is a problem in certain circumstances, a perfect storm, as you say, but I think it's just being blown out of all proportion. It does seem to be software for the vast majority, and I mean the absolute vast majority of you out there. You have nothing to worry about from the data we've seen. And remember that our data is from people who are likely to be concerned. And there's every likelihood that the issue will be addressed by Apple in the software update in the near future for those that are experiencing that perfect storm, or as more apps become native Apple Silicon apps as opposed to universals.
Yeah, something else to just bear in mind as well is that the swapping, we don't know whether that gets actually written to the disk or whether Apple has done something clever with its SSD controller to keep the swap inside the cache part of the SSD. And we don't know whether that cache is, because Apple don't publish the details, we don't know what type of flash it's using. It's highly likely to be a very durable flash. I suspect nobody really needs to worry, even the people that are writing the high amounts of data. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying this for definite or nailing my colours to the mast here. I'm just simply saying it wouldn't surprise me if it turns out there isn't an issue at all. Because I just can't believe that Apple's engineers wouldn't have noticed this.
No.
So, anyway, lots of interesting comments on both the channels, but I feel like we've probably almost outstayed our welcome here with our folks, because we're knocking on the door of an hour already, and I'm interested to see what you're going to eat, Pete.
Yes.
Before you do that, just one sad piece of news, because I'm a petrol head, as many people know. And I know you like a little bit of motorsport and motoring. I was so sad this week to hear that Sabine Schmitz has died. She was quite famously featured on UK Top Gear. She was known as the Queen of the Nürburgring, and she helped Jeremy Clarkson set a time in a Jaguar, I think, and then she tried to beat it with a transit van. Remember that? And she hosted Top Gear and did various things. I didn't realise that she's been fighting cancer for 3 years, poor thing, and sadly she lost that battle this week. So we sometimes say cheerio to people that have meant something to us, and I remember Sabine very fondly, and I was very sad to hear that. Anyway, so I just thought I'd like to say that on the podcast. Condolences to her husband, and rest in peace, Sabine.
Oh yeah, no, that's sad news. So echo those sentiments. So I guess that's it. Apart from Pete's Eats, for those that want to stay and watch that.
Well, I think everyone should stay and watch it. Well, I don't know. It depends. What are you eating this week, Pete? Is it something horrible? Given, and this is the first podcast where I've still got liquid in my dram glass at the end of the podcast. I was going to say.
Is it horrible? I don't know.
What have you got?
I don't know. Well, I've got to go and prepare it.
Okay.
So I would suggest what we do at this point is stop recording so I can go and prepare it, and then carry on recording after that.
So through the magic of video editing, in just a moment you will find out what Pete is going to eat.
You need to snap your fingers again, don't you?
Well, I already snapped my fingers, so
Yeah.
so now we just appear. Through the magic of video editing, here we are again, and we've advanced into the future. So actually, Pete, your introductory comments weren't irrelevant.
No.
We have literally, our users have literally travelled into the future. How
They have.
exciting for them.
They have.
What are you eating, Pete?
Right, okay. So we've had a few suggestions in the last few weeks. One of them was a toast sandwich.
Oh, those are great.
Now, yeah, that sounded a little bit safe. So in a similar toast-related vein, someone suggested toast with yogurt on it.
No, that's wrong.
Well,
I'm sorry, but that's anything with yogurt on it is wrong. Oh, you've done it as well.
so what I've done is a toast sandwich, but what you can see in there is some yogurt. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's not mayonnaise. That is the only yogurt I could find in the fridge that looked like it was still safe to eat.
Bear in mind, no yogurt is really safe to eat, Pete, because it is basically gone off milk. It's disgusting. I can't bear it. It's just.
You're not a big fan of milk, are you?
I don't like anything other than cheese, but that's sufficiently far removed from the cow's udder, as far as I'm
It's
concerned.
basically really gone off milk. Anyway, yeah, so this is Greek yogurt with honey in it.
Okay, well, before you go on, I feel like we need to just educate our listeners/viewers on the toast sandwich. Not everyone will be familiar with this concept. So you make your sandwich as usual with 2 slices of bread, but toast an additional slice and pop that into the middle of your sandwich. You don't have to do anything special with it. It's just pop a piece of toast between the bread, and it gives you some extra texture to your sandwiches, and it's more filling as well.
Yeah, lots of carbohydrate, which is not normally the way I roll, but we got 3 weeks until the gym's open, so what the hell?
Fill your boots, Pete.
Fill my boots.
So you are having... What else have you put in your toast sandwich? Have you buttered it?
Yes.
So you've got butter in there, and what? Just yogurt and honey?
Greek yogurt, but with honey in it.
So what you've basically got is your toast sandwich with your butter, and
Yes.
then yogurt, which has come from a cow's nipple
Yes.
and gone off, and then honey, which comes from a bee's bum, doesn't it? Or have I got that completely wrong, aren't I?
I'm not sure that it comes from a bee's bum, but I think it comes from the rear quarters of the bee. Maybe someone who's got some kind of, expertise.
Actual knowledge.
I've not really studied it that hard, but yeah. So
As you can probably tell, I don't like honey either. So
do you not? So maybe you should
really.
Eat this.
No,
maybe you should eat this. Okay.
No, sorry, Pete. I had the Palm Beach rum liqueur.
Yeah.
And the brolly thing. Just saying.
To those listening or watching, if you'd like me to continue selecting Dave's drinks, by all means, just let me know in the comments. Shall I give this a go then?
Yeah, stop talking and put it in your face. So Pete is lifting the sandwich. I'm going to provide a commentary for listeners. Oh, Pete's masticating that toast. I can't see, if you like yogurt and honey and you like toast and butter, I don't see that you're going to have any issue with this, Pete. And judging by the look on your face, you don't have an issue with it.
No, if anything, there's not enough yogurt in it. I should have put more yogurt in it.
Guys, I really feel that your suggestions are falling short of the mark and what I had originally envisaged for Pete Eats, which is pain and suffering for Pete. And I don't feel that we're providing that. So can we have some suggestions that are more horrific, please?
I don't mind eating weird stuff as long as it's not seafood based or stuff like that. Like the peanut butter and pickle sandwich was gross, but I'll eat that. But things that make me retch, or there's a few things that I am genuinely allergic to, I will have to veto, but I'll tell you what they are if they come along.
Okay. And I definitely think we need more sriracha in these suggestions.
You can never have enough sriracha. Or maybe you can. We'll have to find out.
Indeed. And I think, Pete, all things having been duly considered and carefully contemplated, that is probably enough of that. And it's time to end the podcast.
Definitely. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll be back this time next week with another podcast on a subject, probably tech-related.
Possibly. There may even be some eating, and hopefully I'll have some whiskey. Be nice people.
We have also had someone or a few people volunteer to help us with the stats on our survey, so we may have a few updates there as well. But, let's see what the week brings, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. This is the Constant Geekery Podcast. Cheerio.
Cheerio.